My name is Melanie Dizon, the Director of Education and Research at the Davis Phinney Foundation, and we are here today for our YOPD Council. We're super happy to have all of you here today. So today we're going to do some Q&A. And the reason why is because we've had a lot of requests for people to come on and just be able to ask questions. And then also I'll invite our panel members for you guys to share what's top of mind for you if you think there's something that we can share with the rest of the audience. Kat, go for it.
I'll start. So one of the hardest things for me about being diagnosed young is that I'm married to an equally young person, my husband Ken, and he is not near retirement, or we didn't think he was near retirement. And I think having a lot of time and feeling somewhat retired, even though I left on medical leave and on disability, I've really missed being able to spend some time with him. And so we're currently exploring some options about ways for him to retire early, so that we can maximize our time together in my healthier times. I'm noticing progression of symptoms, and I think a lot of us feel a clock ticking when with a diagnosis like Parkinson's, and I feel excited and a little nervous about looking at options. So that's kind of where I am at the stage of life. And I don't know that we'll be able to do it, but we're looking at things like selling our house maybe and doing some traveling in a trailer, a little Airstream maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But it's a big change in a time when we didn't think we'd be dealing with it in our 50s rather than later. So it's more just something to report, and I'd love to hear what other people have done out there and ways they've looked at it, and any advice for us as we're looking at options. So I'll open that up to the panel for sure, and anybody else at home that can chime in.
I'm a strong endorser of car top tent campers.
Can you get in and out, Kevin? Is it hard?
You know what? It's part of my occupational therapy, getting in and out, but I love it. It's my freedom machine, and we just during COVID have used it. It's sort of an in-between step of selling your house and buying an RV or a one of those Sprinter vans.
Yeah.
It's the freedom of seeing things and experiencing things is wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I've seen your pictures, Kevin, and they're impressive, but I keep thinking, how am I going to get up in there? But I like that.
I want to know how to get out of there, Kevin, to go to the bathroom, and how many times a night you have to go to the bathroom.
Well, you just got to limit your wine and beer intake before going to bed.
It's one of those you climb in and fall out kind of things.
I think you should have a fireman's pole that you can slide down, and you just get onto it.
Yeah, a slide, like the inflatable slides is what I was thinking, more like. Yeah, I like that, Kevin, though. Thank you. That's an endorsement.
That's a good idea. Also, you should check out the camping series, right? Like they had some really awesome tips on that. It was fun.
Kat,
Tom,
if I could quickly offer something to Kat, when you do things with your husband in this period that's forthcoming, exercise together is
always
good for both of you. So that'll keep you going, and it'll keep him going. So make that a big party what you do. So I think that'll be good.
Yeah, we've been building that in already. I just look forward to having him a little more after exercise too.
Right. I'd love to go a little bit into this topic, because I think there's like the logistical piece of retiring, and there's doing the financial assessment and doing the home assessment, all of those different things. But for those of you who have retired, whether intentionally, not intentionally, there's also that feeling of purpose and meaning of getting up and feeling like, what am I doing now? Like I'm not working, or like I don't have the same identity as a worker as I used to. What do you do with that? how does that feel? What are the challenges, and what are some things that you've done to, find the purpose and meaning elsewhere? I mean, aside from being here, which is a big deal.
Huge.
So yeah. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Karen?
Well, I remember where I'm at 3 or 4 years into my diagnosis is very different. Kevin was one of the first people that I met actually with Parkinson's, and I went on a Parkinson's ski retreat because I love to ski, and Kevin was on the ski retreat. And I remember being very, very depressed during that time. It was during the first year of my diagnosis. I wasn't working. I had been a nurse anesthetist in a busy practice, and my husband was very introverted and he didn't really want to be on the trip. Now he loves the trip. We've gone back before, but it was a hard time for us. And I specifically just, Kevin shined so bright. And I remember feeling like I wanted to feel the way he looked. I wanted to feel the way on the inside that he looked on the outside. And I remember asking him about it, and he told me about his talk about mindful pivoting. And when he made which is one of the Davis Phinney talks that he had given, and when he made that sort of transition from making that decision that this could be a positive thing in his life to have that Parkinson's diagnosis. And that talk really turned things around for me. I remember, okay, I can do this. I can go back home and I can do this. And somebody put a question in the chat about how did they meet other people with Parkinson's. And I enjoyed so much as I hated being around other people with Parkinson's at the beginning, I also enjoyed it. And it was sort of like, I was drawn to it, but I wasn't sure why and how. And I just slowly started building a new life for myself. And bit by bit, it just got better and better. And now I can truly say I am a much happier person now with Parkinson's 4 years later than without Parkinson's before. It's just really illuminated my life.
Thank you. That's great, Karen.
And to add to that, I don't know that I would say I'm a happier person, but I'm more humble. I'm more interested in spiritual. Just everything is taking the trajectory of away from the material world and into the spiritual for me. And I write more, I think, with more depth. And I want my relationships to have more intimacy and depth because I'm playing for keeps now. Whereas before I might have thought that I had time. And as you can see, I don't believe I have time anymore. This just says in Latin, remember you will die, which is to remember to live right now, to sort of bounce off what everyone has said here in our introductions. Like Kat, we need to stay here now. And that's the hardest thing for me, to let go of that grasping onto the past and the future and try to stay here now. Because the ego is always looking for, a job, to perceive threats and to be worried. But to stay here right now is what we've got. It's what we've got, So for that, I'm thankful.
Kevin?
Yeah, Mel,
Hey,
your
sorry.
comment on retirement and resignation is particularly true for me because I actually just got my official end of work termination letter yesterday.
Wow.
And it really stung, even though I had sort of it kind of admitted to myself that it was time to stop working. And it was, I think, so much of our self-worth, unfortunately, is placed in work, falsely so. And while, I've constantly felt like this is my new job now, right? Taking care of myself and taking care of the tribe. It hurts when you get that letter and you actually sign it, And I don't know how others in the panel have dealt with it, but I think we ride this roller coaster of highs and lows all the time, sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, but we all have that cycle. And I'd sort of built up this idea that, retiring at 60 would be a great thing. And I still think it is, but I still go back to, what about all those Zoom calls? What about all those trips that I used to make for work? The meetings I used to prepare for. And I just have to kind of move off of that.
Absolutely. Amy, you were going to jump in?
I was going to jump in as the counter voice, I guess, to Kat, because I am not yet at a place where we can make those decisions. So I'm holding on for dear life to the working world. And if anybody is in that same space, I'm happy to talk to them elsewhere. But yeah, sort of like those aren't options right now. So there's plenty of us, I think, who fall on both of those lines. And for anybody who's trying to not retire because they either don't think that they can or they literally can't, that's another topic too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And let us know if you guys want to reach out, and you can look for Amy on our site, and I know she'd be perfectly happy to talk to you. And then also Tom Cosentino, one of our ambassadors, said that I'll get to your other question too, Tom, but he said we sold our house and moved to Delaware. I have enough funds to now be retired, and my wife will be retired in 2 years. I'm a numbers guy and willing to talk to anyone on this. So thank you so much, Tom, for offering that. I'm sure people will take you up on it. Tom, what were you going to say?
Basically what the other Tom just said.
Okay.
And we know each other. We've talked to each other on the phone. I've been through the diagnosis, and I worked for about 4 or 5 more years following that. I did a year transition out of work, and then I've been retired ever since. So I've been dealing with this for 13 years. I'm certainly open to talk to people about it. And there are some very identifiable steps, and then there's a lot of things that are not quite as identifiable. So some intangible things that you can deal with. But again, I'm more than happy to talk to people about making that transition, both from work to retirement, as well as how to redefine yourself and how to set a new game plan for that you didn't plan on doing to begin with. So
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'd like to add, that part of why we're looking at it is about a time issue, not about we're having to kind of right size our life in a lot of ways, which we've had to do, which will mean downsizing and shrinking what our expectations are and valuing time together, perhaps more than things and cars and big trips, or getting creative about it. I've talked about that before, that I had always hoped to travel in retirement, and without an income, that has been very difficult for us. So we've gotten creative, sharing, doing house trades and building up points and renting out some of the space in our house. So I think that with the right mindset and congruent priorities in a team, that you can find a middle place, because it's the last thing I wanted to do was give up my career delivering babies. It was a great career, and I feel like I'm in the second act now, and I'm focusing on the things that I can do and trying to let go of the things that are more difficult or hard or more challenging, and trying to focus on, like Heather, relationships and people and playing for keeps. And yeah, none of us plan this, right, Kev? Right? So, we all think, oh, we'll work till 65 or taper off. The kids will be through college. Well, I still have, one just graduated. I still have 2 kids in college. So it's about getting creative for us and thinking outside the box and living with less, frankly. And
Yeah.
that's not all bad. Less is not bad. Less is sometimes really simple, which I love. So.
Right. Yeah, as Heather said, this is not what we had planned. So letting go and reimagining our careers is our constant transition. Yeah, I mean, I think it takes a whole just reframing. It is this thing, and there's no fighting it. There's no taking it back. So what can be done? Let's see, we have a lot of questions. Yvonne said, retiring early has been the bomb. PD and retirement has been an opportunity in many ways. Yes. We did put some info about the ski trip, and we also put Kevin's talk up there. So if you don't get it here, you'll get it in the show notes for sure. I just want to make sure, go back to some of the questions. Heather, actually, let's go to Heather. Heather, DBS, what are you open to sharing? And whatever that is, we would love to hear about it. We'd love to hear about the decision, what made you decide to do it, the surgery itself, and then what have been the after downstream impacts of it?
Well, as many of you know, including Davis, at a certain point in time, your drugs lose their efficacy. And so you run out of choices and you find yourself in a dystonia, or you might have bradykinesia and dystonia. You might have, you know, a lot of other things. I had the dystonia and the bradykinesia. So I was really upset that I was not able to function anymore. And I've been so disappointed with my programming until, you guys aren't going to believe this. This is why they need to do more tests on women. I took off my combi patch for menopause and my drugs work again. And the DBS suddenly works. The combi patch blocked the drugs from getting to my system somehow. I do not know why. I can find no studies to confirm this, but that's the only change that I made medically. I have the same exact lifestyle, same exact meds, same exact diet, sleep pattern. Everything's exactly the same. I haven't even changed my relationships or anything. There's nothing going on in my life right now that would be startling at all. But upon taking that patch off within a few days, the meds work again. Look.
Wait, so
Unbelievable.
what made you think to take the patch off?
My doctors, thank goodness, because I had been really hammering the people that are on my team. Every day I was like texting them saying, I can't move. I'm afraid. I feel like I'm at the end of my life. I need palliative care. Couldn't get down the stairs. I was slurring except for maybe 1 or 2 hours each day when I would become manic after taking a lot of drugs for the Parkinson's medications. And I couldn't figure it out. It was a process of elimination.
That's
I'm
amazing.
already dairy free, wheat free. I'm very careful with my diet. It wasn't that. And I tried not to eat during my medication. I've tried everything. Everything. And upon removing the combi patch, which is an estrogen patch for women that are going through menopause, everything seems to be kind of okay.
Wow.
So far, so good. I'm not going to question it.
Yeah, and you will
This is
not
for
find
anybody
that
who's struggling.
You won't find that in a book or a resource or anything. So
You heard it here first, kid.
Here, yeah. So that's truly amazing. So you're feeling great today.
Yeah, and just to be specific about this, I did the globus pallidus, not the subthalamus nucleus. Like Benjamin Stetcher had a different, insertion place. So the globus pallidus is the size of a jelly bean, roughly. It's a little bit harder to program, a little more complex. If you do get DBS, I would highly recommend, try to be patient. I hate that word. Like, don't tell me to be patient when I can't even bathe myself or cut my own food, don't tell me to be patient. But if you can be patient and wait out your programming, it will behoove you.
Heather, how long has it been since your surgery?
What is it like? When were you over? 3 months? 3 or 4 months?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought people should know your timeline.
Yeah, about 4 months in, and I was ready to throw in the towel. I was like, this is the end of my life. I'm quitting all my jobs. I can't take care of myself or my family. I was truly losing hope. For the first time in my life, I was devastated. I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. I've had MRIs to check everything, and it's all good so far.
Wow, that's great. Very good news. Very happy to hear that.
Thank you.
Speaking of drugs, the question is, did anyone delay starting drugs? So, our general advice from our doctors are, the minute it starts impacting your daily life, impacting, daily activities, going to the bathroom, getting coffee, any of those things, anytime it starts impacting, that's a good time to take them. But if anybody here delayed it and wants to speak to that, Kat.
Yeah, I waited. I was concerned about the side effects of dyskinesias, and I hadn't read a lot of evidence that supported starting meds early. However, I think that's changing. I think there are more studies out now that seem to share that we might have a window of time where it's the most efficacious for us to take medicines. I wish in retrospect I wouldn't have waited so long. But I also don't believe in regret. I believe that you make the best choice with the tools you're presented. I waited about 3 years before starting Cinemet and about 2 years before starting the agonists. but I felt better pretty quickly after starting the medicines. So, but I have gone up fairly quickly in my dosing, probably to catch up with disease progression. And that was my reasoning. And yet my baseline was, if I couldn't get out and go exercise and exercise hard, then I needed to be on medicine. And when the dystonia started to really affect that, that's when I started.
Great. And I can't tell if you've already done that, Lee, but if you could put that medication, those 2 webinars with Dr. Aaron Haug in the chat, people will get it. We did a general one and then we did Q&A, and that'll be really great. Tom and then Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. I started out quite slowly at the advice of my doctor, and back in those days, again, this is 13 years ago, that was kind of more the common thought. Although in the few years after that, I started to see things change to where doctors were starting medications earlier. Now, it depends on a lot of things, like how severe you might be when you start, or when you were originally diagnosed, versus how you may not be showing many symptoms. Like I didn't have a tremor, so I didn't have to have much under control, so to speak, with the medication. So that helped me to stave off the use of medication for quite a number of years. And then gradually I started on with agonists first, then carbidopa, levodopa, and that's all I'm still taking today. So, and not that much, comparatively speaking, about 6 to 7 pills, carbidopa, levodopas a day, about every 4 hours.
Okay, great. I have another question for you, Tom, related to that, but let's go to Kevin first and then we'll get back.
Okay.
So, in my case, I actually wanted the early confirmation that my diagnosis was correct. And I sort of assumed that if I reacted to this Cinemet, that it was a true Parkinson's diagnosis. But that was actually a slippery slope, because once I started that, then they started adding on dopamine agonists, which I would say work for some, but take with great caution if you have young onset, because of some of the behavioral changes that I experienced. And I know many of you others have experienced as well.
Heather's face.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that for me was just the light of my journey was that when I had DBS, I actually went medication free for 4 years. So that was blissful, because not only was DBS working, I was exercising like a fiend, but I didn't have to take medicine, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm a pharmaceutical guy. So, for me to say that medications were actually a negative thing is quite an enlightenment.
Yeah. Okay, so Tom, I think we did talk about this last time about dyskinesia during exercise. Do you remember that last time? Okay, so this question is, the person says, when he takes a half a carbidopa, levodopa to mediate an episode, how long does it take to become effective, and what do you do during that time? So I think you usually take it when you're exercising if you need more, right? Like during it, but right before it.
I don't usually take additional unless for some reason I'm suffering more longer off periods, which I don't typically do. So I'll take 2 Cinemet and a Comtane as part of my regime, and then I'll if I need to take more, if I'm going to be exercising, like the other day when we were running the Tour to Victory bike ride, I wasn't riding, but I was working the ride the whole day. I took a bottle, a solid or a solid color bottle, so it doesn't let light in, and I'll dissolve a Cinemet in that bottle. And then as I drink from that bottle of water all day long, I'm always getting a little bit of Cinemet just to keep myself kind of topped off during the day. And that works absolutely wonderfully. So that kind of takes out the dips in the off periods, and I come on much quicker than normal.
Great. Thank you for that. That's really good help. Karen, did you have your hand raised? Should make sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of circling back to the medication question at the beginning. I actually went on medication right away, and I had a lot of problems with the medication. Everything from severe nausea vomiting to the levodopa, to side effects from the dopamine agonists causing severe impulse control problems for me, and drug reactions with some of the other medicines like the rasagiline, and I just really struggled. I tried very hard to take the medication. I decided at the beginning that the medication was, the treatment was worse than the disease for me. And I actually chose to go off the medication for a period of time and focus on exercise, mindfulness, meditation, things that would actually improve the quality of my life, not detract from the quality of my life. And my neurologist said, you know, when you're ready, I actually considered early deep brain stimulation and decided at that time to hold off. I decided after about a year off medication to give it a try again, because I really felt that taking levodopa was going to be important for the quality of my life with Parkinson's disease. And when I did it again, I had success. And really just taking some steps away, maybe the anxiety of the early diagnosis was contributing to the side effects profiles of the medications. So I kind of started on it, went off it, and then went back on it again. And that worked for me. So it was something a little different than some other people might have. So I wanted to share that with you guys.
Thank you. Kat?
I just wanted to advocate that people out there, sometimes you think if you start a medicine, you can't stop it. And it's certainly important to work in tandem with your provider and whoever's prescribing it. But you really get to be the boss of what's going on with you. And you pay people that you go to see, your providers, your pharmacists, your occupational therapists, your massage therapist. You're paying money and you're a consumer. And you get to make the decisions that are right for you. And if something isn't working, it's okay to be the squeaky wheel and to make phone calls and to say, I'm not feeling good and I'm not sure this is working. And it's okay to go off of medicine, right, Karen? You know, you do it in tandem with your provider. You know, Heather just talked about stopping a medicine. Karen talked about it. You have to partner with your providers and the people that you trust to give you information, but it's ultimately your decision about how you manage it. And I think sometimes we forget that we are the captain of the ship. We're the chick in charge, and or the guy in charge, the chunk in charge, however you put it.
Crap and the chick. Thank you. This is a great question. I think this is going to be, I think everyone's going to have something about this. So here's the question. What do you do when your soul gets tired of fighting this every day? Kevin.
No, it's funny. This was a question that I wanted to raise with the group too, because I was just on the road visiting a fellow ambassador in Nevada. And he was telling me that, you know, he'd sort of hit the wall and was thinking suicidal thoughts. And I promised him that we would discuss this issue because the issue of mental health and the dark days are something that hit many of us. I mean, I've certainly been there as well. And I think we all need to find two things. One, how we deal with it with ourselves, and how do we help others that express it to us? So I don't have all the answers to that, but I do know that social interaction and knowing that you're not alone in your journey has helped me. Helping other people has helped me too. So those become sort of, you know, mechanisms, but it's not always easy just being a cheerleader right on there. I think we all get weary of that from time to time. And we just have to forgive ourselves when we do take a lull and find ways, whatever it is, medication, meditation, you know, travel, escape, whatever it is you do. We just have to find our own cycle of how to pick ourselves back up. I'm curious how my other panel members pick themselves up.
That's really good response, Kevin. You know, I think David Phinney said it best, and how I've always kind of put it away in my mind is that it takes courage to have Parkinson's disease, and it takes even more courage to live well with Parkinson's disease. So I think those words have always echoed in my mind whenever I felt a little despair or a little discouraged about my day. And I find myself wanting to do that little bit more when I feel like I can't. And that always seems to bring me around. And that's not a cure for everybody by any means. But the other thing is depression and anxiety are not something you should try to take on yourself, by yourself. I think you need to get not just professional help, but help from your friends and peers. And this group, for example, we're certainly available to help talk to you at least. And so, again, it's easier said than done, but we're here.
Thank you for that, Tom. Heather.
What I find is really helpful here, I'll put this down, is to keep asking the questions and being curious about why you're suffering so, instead of wanting that quick, immediate release to get out of your suffering. I know this is really hard to say, and this does not apply necessarily to someone who's suicidal, but to stay in it and to remember it's temporary. You are grounded, you have a reason to be here. You are necessary on this planet and with your family and with people around you. Whether or not you feel that, it's not really up to you. You need to be here. You do grounding meditations, you can ask for help. You can also be in service. One of the fastest ways for me to get out of my downward spiral is to help somebody else. And when I say help somebody else, someone who's asking for help. I don't go looking like, does anybody need some help? Would you like my opinion? It's not like that. It's more like there's something called the soft white underbelly that I listen to on YouTube. It is a man who interviews people who are really down in their luck, the forgotten people in the world, addicts, people that live on the street, a lot of homeless people. And I don't take strength from it, but I am reminded by it. It can always be worse. And also when I'm really, really low, I remember all the people who've given me love, all the ancestors who worked so hard to get me here and never give up. And yes, of course, reach out. And when you do reach out, don't expect someone to always be or do the right thing. Because, we're not trained either. We don't really know. Nobody knows what to do. You don't know how you're catching someone. Like you might catch them in the middle of something and they're very nonchalant and they kind of push your question off. It's not personal. We're all very distracted by our own stuff. To just, try to return to that place of it being impermanent whenever possible. It's impermanent. It will pass. I promise. Promise.
Karen. And then Amy.
I've struggled with depression in my life before Parkinson's, and I don't know if it's a neuropsychiatric complication of Parkinson's or just something that I've contended with. My father had Parkinson's, and I've talked to Heather about this. She used the term before, toxic positivity. It's not real. Nobody's positive all the time. And, the other day I had to go off my levodopa for 48 hours for an exam. And I thought I wanted to jump from a building. I'm not exaggerating. I was very dark. I was very depressed. I did not feel well, and I didn't recognize it was happening. That was the scariest part. I was writing a poem about it, and the poem was very, very dark. And I shared it because I'm in a poetry group, I shared it with my brothers, and they called me. I even said on the email, this is like my last poem. And I wasn't saying I was going to, was suicidal, but I didn't even realize the language I was using in my own head. And they called me and they were like, are you okay? You're not going to share that poem in your poetry group, are you? And I was like, it's a poetry group. Yes, I am. I was like, but I didn't realize it was happening. And my brother, who's a physician, said, is it possible that you went from 800 milligrams a day of levodopa to 0 and you're having a side effect here? That never even occurred to me, and I'm a medical professional. So I think having people around me who love and care about me and leaning into my friends with Parkinson's, that's been critical, because I don't always want to lean into my husband for things because it's a heavy burden to bear. I need another community around me to help me. And I'm connected enough because of the relationships I've built that I know I can call someone who's safe. And I called Heather actually, and she told me she understood, and that made all the difference. But the other thing is reaching, being in service to others. We've heard this from a number of people, is huge. And I learned that in AA. I'm a member of AA, and leaning, being of service to others is just critical in life to really kind of getting out of your own stuff and reaching your hand out to another human. To me, that's helpful.
Thanks, Karen. Amy.
Yeah, I think we're all saying the same things, and community and reaching out is really important. Getting proper medical therapy for clinical anxiety and depression is really important. And I say the same things, and I frame it a little bit differently than Heather and Karen, but it's the same exact thing. I tend to, when I feel down, it tends to be at night. And invariably I feel better in the morning, but at night, I try to just lose myself in something bigger. I tend to go into literature or some philosophy or just things that take me out of my own little self. That helps. And it's the same thing that you all are talking about in terms of sort of seeing the bigger things that life is about than just your little problems and your little world. And when you talk about service, I talk about responsibility. I think it's really therapeutic to have a responsibility toward something that makes you get out of bed and have to do something, which is kind of, I think, a little reason why I'm terrified of retirement a little bit, because I feel like getting up and having to go to work and take care of my children is keeping me well. And that's just like service. And so responsibility with a capital R is a really big factor in wellness for me. But I don't know what it feels like to not have that. And I think I'm a little scared of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Heather, you're muted. Sorry, but go for it.
There's a great quote about that, Amy. It's by Victor Hugo, I think. The peculiarity of the sunrise is to make us laugh at all our terrors of the night, and our laugh is always proportioned to the fear we've had.
Oh,
So
you
the
got that
peculiarity
right.
of the
Really
sunrise
quick.
is to sort of wake us up again, like, oh my gosh, the sun keeps rising.
Yeah.
Because I get terrified at night too, because I live
Yeah.
alone. So.
Heidi said, I think my faith keeps me going. Being creative also helps.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. Chris said, I'm sure there's a relation to these feelings and our dopamine levels. It actually hurts more on days that I hurt more. So it hurts mentally when I hurt physically, right? Did someone else? Karen, did you have your hand up again, or Tom? I just want to make sure I'm not missing.
Oh, Tom, go ahead.
I'm good.
Okay.
I was gonna, we're never too old to learn things. And I learned something really major the other day about the way I approach sorrow. And this was a really great lesson. I've always done a gratitude list. And when I'm feeling down, I've done a gratitude list. And I would say, some days it's really hard to find something to be grateful for. And something might be, I'm grateful I can hear. I'm grateful that I don't have a paper cut. I'm grateful I don't have dystonia right this second. Sometimes I have to reach for something. But someone said to me this, and this is what really changed my viewpoint. They said, it's important to have a grateful list, but it's also important to have a hateful list. That you have to acknowledge both sides of that coin. You can't constantly just be all Pollyanna about everything that's wonderful, because it doesn't acknowledge that dark side and that deep pain that we experience as humans living life, whether it's with Parkinson's or just living life. And I had never thought of that. And it really just changed my view, because my favorite quote, I thought about it when Heather did, is by Khalil Gibran from the book The Prophet. He's a Lebanese poet, and he says, the deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. And it reminds me a little bit of Heather's quote, but you can't have one without the other. And I think the acknowledgement of that pain and sorrow is important.
That. So somebody asked a great question, and it was going to be my question. So this is perfect. So a lot of what you guys have talked about today has to do with having a support group, having the people in your life, having people you can call, people on speed dial. I'm having this issue. Can you help me out? I think it would be great to offer some really, really practical steps that people can take? Yes, we're moving out of COVID, but what are both? Like, what are some two, whether, back in the world, great things to do, or just at home things to do? What are some specific things that you guys did that really helped you build your friend with Parkinson's network? Anybody want to? Kat?
So I think I'm remembering back to being early diagnosed, and it took a little while to find a network of people for me, and a support group. And I found kind of my people both at exercise classes and then starting a young onset support group. So I think giving yourself some grace, and then Heather's favorite word, a little bit of patience, to find your people, but to also accept that you might need to coexist a little bit in that uncomfortable space for a little while until you build that network. What I want to say is we're all here. The Davis Phinney Foundation is here. The World Parkinson Coalition is here. There's all kinds of organizations that you can reach out to now online or virtually. There's ambassadors. Many of us are ambassadors for the Davis Phinney Foundation. We're available to talk and reach out if you are feeling alone. So I think that's the biggest piece. And for me, on those really, really dark days, I have my go-to phone call people who I will reach out to. And they're a small handful of people, but if I call and say I'm struggling, they'll call me back. Or I'll text, hey, I need you. And those are lifelines for me. And sometimes it's my husband, but like you, I think Amy or Karen, somebody was mentioning that you don't always want to go to your partner or your care partner all the time. And because other people with Parkinson's get it in a way that people without Parkinson's don't. So all I can say is that none of us want you to feel like you're out there alone. That's why we're here doing this. And we're accessible. We're available if you're feeling like you don't have somewhere to reach out to. So that's my soapbox announcement, I guess. But
Thank you, Kat. Tom?
That was a good one. Good soapbox, Kat. I totally appreciate it. Hey, I started kind of the same way. I got involved right away. I started volunteering for the Parkinson's Association of the Rockies here in Denver. I just answered the phones on Friday mornings. That's all I did. And that led to me meeting some folks there and then going to support group meetings and whatnot. And that doesn't mean you have to start one, but you can. I think that's a great idea, but just attending one. And then at one of the Davis Phinney events years ago, I was just standing there and this guy just walked up to me and we started chatting. And then he said, look, I don't want to sound weird or anything. He said, but I don't have anybody to talk to all day, every day. He goes, would you like to go out for coffee? Dawn and I are still really close friends today, and we met about 13 years ago. So
That is
great way to get started. Just get involved.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've never met somebody in this Parkinson's community who I didn't ask a question or reach out and they weren't like immediately on it and wanting to figure out how to help. So if I were to get a chronic condition, I would hope it would be this, because I would know so many people that I can reach out to. It's great. So if you are on this call right now and you are like, I wish I was one of those panel, they all friends, they all know each other. You can be there. We will help facilitate. You can email us at any time and we are going to figure something out for you. You do not have to do this alone. Amy, were you just going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to second that, because I've gotten a lot of people contacting me through my role as ambassador, as everybody else has too. And some people have told me that they were afraid because they were afraid to talk about it. And so they resisted the call, they resisted the email because they couldn't hear themselves say that they had Parkinson's. And I understand that feeling. And I want to just really encourage everybody to just make that call. Send that email, because I think that's the biggest hurdle, is hearing yourself say it, I have Parkinson's, and telling somebody else. Once you say it, it opens up a lot of other things that make it a lot easier. And I heard Tom say that he was answering calls. When my dog died, I called a dog hotline for people who just lost their dog. And I was on the phone for 3 hours with that person, and that changed everything. It was so helpful. And just a hotline, like just make a call. It doesn't matter really who's hearing you, as long as they are sort of trained, as we all are, to sort of help you through this. Please don't be afraid to make the call. It helps a lot.
Yeah.
One of our attendees brings up an excellent point too about mental health having a stigma. I'm going to go with this, and I know that this is easy for me to say because I'm a person who has my basic needs covered, and I'm not fighting to keep my job, my main job. But I want to say this about mental health. It would be a lot worse if you deny it and try to put it in a box somewhere and tuck it away, then go ahead and let it out a little bit. And I don't mean to say that you're going to walk up to everyone and say, hi, I'm mentally ill, hey, I'm having troubles with this. But to acknowledge that Parkinson's comes with, almost always, some type of illness that includes anxiety, depression, chronic mental health problems. To deny that is to deny ourselves healing. So I'd rather go ahead and say it, take the chance of being judged and scrutinized and shunned than to ignore it and not get the help we need. So, and I'll be the first one here to admit live right now that I do struggle with mental health issues. I do struggle with storylining and anxiety and depression all the time. I can feel it nipping at my heels. But the fact that I'm acknowledging it is very much like being in recovery and saying I'm an alcoholic. It's very much like that. To acknowledge it is how we start to heal. Just want to add that in.
Hey, Heather, I think that's really great what you said. It is more challenging when someone is in the working world because your colleagues, as supportive as they are of you, will judge you. And you could see it almost instantly when you do disclose it, that you're having some issues, is that all of a sudden the choice projects don't come your way or you get marginalized. And I think that's just part of the bigger picture that we have in our acceptance, is that being marginalized, or as I call trivialized, is just part of what comes with this, right? And you just find new ways of finding value and developing value and transferring value to someone else.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And also, I mean, you can, one way to look at it is, you broke your leg, you're not going to not get it fixed. You have an injury. Mental health is nothing more than an injury. And you can get it fixed. You can get it worked on. You're just like I've had 8,000 knee blowouts. It's never going to be the same, but it's better. I'm getting it fixed every time I can. I'm doing the work. And if you go for mental health help, it might not, change everything, but you will get the tools and you will become a skill builder and you will become somebody who can manage it. So yeah, I mean, no, nothing to be afraid of. And also, I mean, everybody is telling you this is part of it. And if you have a good doctor, they know it too. And they're going to help you find the resources in your area that can help you out. So don't ever be afraid to bring it up. We are coming up toward the end of the hour, but I would love if there's any last minute questions that anybody has or any last minute comments that people want to share before we head out. Yes, exactly. We're all just human beings after all, just with different brain chemistry. Absolutely. Right. Anybody else have any final thoughts?
I just have one quick thing to add to this. I think that part of getting out of that fear and that despair is feeling proud of ourselves and everything that you can do and everything that you can show other people that you can do. I think having some pride in your post-diagnosis life is super important and can get you unstuck fairly well.
Amy, I totally agree. I think, just showing up is a victory. Getting out of bed is a victory. I've said it before and I mean it every day. The garbage getting taken is something to be grateful for.
Yeah,
I
and that's
almost,
what we're doing. We're doing, right? Yeah.
so
I'm proud of all of us. Yeah.
yeah,
Doing good.
brushing your teeth. Some days that's
Mm.
the biggest victory if you don't have an electric toothbrush. So,
Yeah.
I think we can find them if we look hard enough. We can find the things to be grateful for and the ways to coexist with Parkinson's. And I'm really grateful for all of you here today. And I really thank people for showing up too and asking some questions.
Absolutely.
I want to add, we could look at each other like we're all tall children because we kind of are. We're all a bunch of kids muddling through.
Yeah. I feel like this is a fun time to offer 2 really fun pieces of advice on oral health, since Kath just mentioned it today. So I learned 2 things for people with Parkinson's this week on keeping your mouth healthy, which is crazy important. And we're going to be offering some info on that. But one of the things is when you have an electric toothbrush or a water pick or something like that, do it in the shower. Somebody mentioned that, make sure you do it in the shower, it doesn't go everywhere. And the other person mentioned lie down, which I had never heard before. But if you have some motor issues or some, real motor problems, if you just lie down and then do it, it apparently is easier. So we're going to share a bunch more on that. But I thought that was fun little tips for those of you out there who are struggling with oral stuff.
So I'm going to quote
Choking.
Mel, lie down and do it. That's what.
Exactly. I also heard today that lying down when you're fighting with somebody dissolves the fight, because we are meant to be in this mode, right? We're meant to be moving forward when we're fighting. We're in that sort of state. And if you are fighting with somebody and you say, lie down, and you guys both lie down, it's like not possible to fight.
Don't do that.
So please, everybody, it's your fights this evening, lie down on the floor. It's going to be
I
great.
learned
Come back.
so much here.
Bring them with
every
you.
time.
Yes. Good.
Hey,
Okay,
Mel.
everybody. Thank
Now,
you. Yeah, Kevin.
just you challenged us a few sessions ago on getting sunlight on our sleep talk.
Yes.
I've been doing that every morning and I swear it works. So thank you for that challenge.
Excellent. Anybody else getting their morning and night sun and helping? Good. Awesome. Yeah, Jackie says we should do a workshop on lying down and fighting, or lying down and not fighting. I think it's a great idea.
So much fun.
I think it's going to be really interesting on Zoom.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Everyone's gonna have to put their computer on the ceiling. This is gonna be great. Never before seen. We're gonna do it. Thank you, everybody, for showing up today. I'm so happy to have all of you on this panel. Thank you for joining us and offering your questions. And please feel free to email us questions at any time. We're gonna be back next month with more questions. And Heather has a fabulous send-off wave for all of us.
May I pull out the whole thing?
Yeah. Wait, wrong way. There we go.
Just this part.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.